Can you see the screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. Okay. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Daya Puri Swaparshada Sviya Dhama Saha Avatari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Daya Puri Swaparshad Sviya Dhama Saha Avatari Atyanta Durlabha Prema Kori Bare Dana Shikhaya Sharanagati Bhakatira Prana अत्यंत दुर्लभ प्रेमा कोरी बारे दाना शिखाय शरणागति भक्तेर प्राण दैन्यात्मनिवेदना गोप्तृत्वे वराणा दैन्यात्मनिवेदना गोप्तृत्वे वराणा अवश्य रक्षिबे कृष्णा विश्वास पालना अवश्य रक्षिबे कृष्णा विश्वास पालना भक्ति अनुकूल मात्र कार्य स्वीकारा भक्ति प्रतिकूल भाव वर्जनांगीकार भक्ति अनुकूल मात्र कार्य स्वीकारा भक्ति प्रतिकूल भाव वर्जनांगीकार षडंग शरणागति होई बेजहारा ताहरा प्रार्थना सुने श्री नंद कुमार रूप सनातन पदे दान्ति तृणपुरी भक्ति विनोदा पड़े दोहु पद धोरी कांदिया बोले आमी तो अधामा शिखाये शरणागति होरो हे उत्तमा. Translation. Out of compassion for the fallen souls, Sri Krishna Chaitanya came to this world with his personal associates and divine abode to teach Sharanagati, the goal of surrender. Surrender to the Almighty Godhead and to freely distribute ecstatic love of God, which is ordinarily very difficult to obtain. This Sharanagati is the very life of the true devotee. The ways of Sharanagati are humility, dedication of the self, acceptance of the Lord as one's only maintainer, faith that Krishna will surely protect, execution of only those acts favorable to pure devotion, and renunciation of conduct adverse to pure devotion. The youthful son of Nanda Maharaja, Sri Krishna, hears the prayers of anyone who takes refuge in him by this sixfold practice. Bhakti Vinoda places a straw between his teeth, prostrates himself before the two Goswamis, Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatana, and clasps their lotus feet with his hands. I am certainly the lowest of men, he tells them weeping, but please make me the best of men by teaching me the ways of Sharanagati. Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Ki Jai. So we will move to the Chaitanya Charitamrita verses. So I'm very grateful to the Mathura Desh Yatra for giving me this opportunity. Preparing for a class is very joyful because you'll be meditating on these verses from the date that I'm informed of this class. So it begins my meditation on these verses, and that is very blissful. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you. And I pray that by the mercy of Guru Srila Prabhupada and Gauranga, we can understand the philosophy which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching, and we can relish his sweetness as well, the sweetness of Krishna as well. So I will just read text 102 to share. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya-deshatarine Mukhaṁ karoti vācālam pangum langhayate girim Yat-kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dīnatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyamishwaram Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Ita shuni hasi Prabhu bolila vachana dukha na mana yadi kori nivedana. After hearing the Mayavadi sannyasi speak in that way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled slightly and said, "My dear sirs, if you don't mind, I can say something to you regarding Vedanta philosophy." So Prabhupada, in the purport of this purport, he shows how Vaishnavas do not avoid Vedanta philosophy. In fact, they are very clear about Vedanta philosophy. Text 103. Iha shuni bole sarva sannyasi ragana tomake dekhiye aiche sakshat narayana. Hearing this, the Mayavadi sannyasis became somewhat humble and addressed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayana himself, who they all agreed he was. Purport. Mayavadi sannyasis address each other as Narayana. Whenever they see another sannyasi, they offer him respect by calling Om Namo Narayanaya. I offer my respect unto you, Narayana. Although they know perfectly well what kind of Narayana he is. Narayana has 4 hands, but although they are puffed up with the idea of being Narayana, they cannot exhibit more than 2. Since their philosophy declares that Narayana and an ordinary human being are on the same level, they sometimes use the term Daridra Narayana, poor Narayana, which was invented by a so-called Swami who did not know anything about Vedanta philosophy. Therefore, although all these Mayavadi sannyasis who call themselves Narayana were actually unaware of the position of Narayana, due to their austerities, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enabled them to understand him to be Narayana himself. And thus, Lord Chaitanya is certainly the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana, appearing as a devotee of Narayana, and thus the Mayavadi sannyasis understanding that he was directly Narayana himself, whereas they were false, puffed up Narayanas, spoke to him as follows. We'll move on to the next. Text 104. Tomara vachana shuni judaya shravana, tomara madhuri dekhi judaya nayana. Dear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they said, to tell you the truth, we are greatly pleased to hear your words, and furthermore, your bodily features are so pleasing that we feel extraordinary satisfaction in seeing you. Purport. In the Shastras, it is said, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyaihi. Sevon mukhehi jihvadav swayam eva sfurat yadaha. With one's materially contaminated senses, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or His name, form, qualities, or paraphernalia. But if one renders service unto Him, the Lord reveals Himself. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Here one can see the effect of the Mayavadi sannyasi service towards Narayana. Because the Mayavadis offered a little respect to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and because they were pious and actually followed the austere rules and regulations of sannyasa, they had some understanding of Vedanta philosophy, and by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they could appreciate that he was none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is endowed with all 6 opulences. One of these opulences is his beauty. By his extraordinarily beautiful bodily features, the Mayavadi sannyasis recognized Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayana himself. He was not a farcical Narayana like the Daridra Narayana invented by so-called sannyasis. Text 105. Tomara prabhave sabara anandita mana, kabhua sangatana he tomara vachana. Translation. Dear sir, by your influence, our minds are greatly satisfied, and we believe that your words will never be unreasonable. Therefore, you may speak on the Vedanta-Sutra. Purport. In this verse, the words Tomara Prabhave, your influence, are very important. Unless one is spiritually advanced, he cannot influence an audience. Bhakti Vinoda Thakura has sung, Shuddha Bhakata Charana Renu Bhajana Anukula. Unless one associates with a pure devotee, he cannot be influenced to understand devotional service. These Mayavadi sannyasis were fortunate enough to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of a devotee. And certainly they were greatly influenced by the Lord. They knew that since a perfectly advanced spiritualist never says anything false, all his words are reasonable and agree with the Vedic version. A highly realized person never says anything that has no meaning. Mayavadi philosophers claim to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this has no meaning. But Srimad Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never uttered such nonsense. The Mayavadi sannyasis were convinced about his personality, and therefore they wanted to hear the purport of Vedanta philosophy from him. Text 106. Prabhu kahe Vedanta Sutra Ishvara Vachana Vyasa Rupe Kailayaha Sri Narayana. The Lord said, Vedanta philosophy consists of words spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana in the form of Vyasadeva. Purport. The Vedanta Sutra, which consists of aphorisms revealing the method of understanding Vedic knowledge, is the concise form of all Vedic knowledge. It begins with the words Athato Brahma Jignasa. Now is the time to inquire about the absolute truth. The human form of life is especially meant for this purpose, and therefore the Vedanta Sutra very concisely explains the human mission. This is confirmed by the words of the Vayu and Skanda Puranas, which define a sutra as follows. Alpaksharam asandigdham saravat vishvato mukham astobham anavadhyam cha sutram sutravido viduhu. A sutra is a compilation of aphorisms that expresses the essence of all Vedic knowledge in a minimum of words. It must be universally applicable and faultless in its linguistic presentation. Anyone familiar with such sutras must be aware of the Vedanta Sutra, which is well known among scholars by the following additional names: Brahma Sutra, Shariraka, Vyasa Sutra, Badarayana Sutra, Uttara Mimamsha, and Vedanta Darshana. There are 4 chapters, adhyayas, in the Vedanta Sutra, and there are 4 divisions, padas, in each chapter. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra may be referred to as Shodasha Pada, or 16 divisions of aphorisms. The theme of each and every division is fully described in terms of 5 different subject matters, adhikaranas, which are technically called Pratigna, Hetu, Udaharana, Upanaya, and Nigamana. Every theme must necessarily be explained with reference to pratigna, or a solemn declaration of the purpose of the treatise. The solemn declaration given in the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra is Athato Brahma Jignasa, which indicates that this book was written with the solemn declaration to inquire about the absolute truth. Similarly, be expressed Hetu. Examples must be given in terms of various facts, Udaharana. The theme must gradually be brought nearer for understanding, Upanaya. And finally, it must be supported by authoritative quotations from the Vedic Shastras, Nigamana. According to the great dictionary compiler Hemachandra, also known as Koshakara, Vedanta refers to the purport of the Upanishads and the Brahmana portion of the Vedas. Professor Apte in his dictionary describes the Brahmana portion of the Vedas as that portion which states the rules for employment of hymns at various sacrifices and gives detailed explanations of their origin, sometimes with lengthy illustrations in the form of legends and stories. It is distinct from the mantra portion of the Vedas. Hemachandra says that the supplement of the Vedas is called the Vedanta Sutra. Veda means knowledge and Anta means the end. In other words, proper understanding of the ultimate purport of the Vedas is called Vedanta knowledge. Such knowledge, as given in the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, must be supported by the Upanishads. So there's a lot of details here about Vedanta Sutra. I request all of you to read it up later. I will move on to the next verse. So, verse 103, the material defects of mistakes, illusions, cheating, and sensory inefficiency do not exist in the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Brahma Pramada Vipralipsa Karana Patava Ishwarera Vakyena Hi Doshaye Sabha. I would like to move on to the next verse. So the gist of the purport here is that the Vedic process is to hear from authority, because human beings have these material defects of mistakes, illusions, cheating, and sensory inefficiency. Where is that verse? Okay. 108. Upanishad Sahita Sutre Kaha Etatva Mukhya Vritye Se Artha Parama Mahatva. The absolute truth is described in the Upanishads and Brahma Sutra, but one must understand the verses as they are. That is the supreme glory in understanding. So here in the purport, Prabhupada talks about how from the time of Shankaracharya, people explain everything regarding the Shastras in an indirect way. They like to make their own interpretations. And then he lists the 108 important Upanishads. Gaunavritye bhashya karila acharya tahara shravane nashehaya sarvakaya. Sripada Shankaracharya has described all the Vedic literatures in terms of indirect meanings. One who hears such explanations is ruined. So this is the main verse I wanted to get to. Tahara nahi kadosha ishvara ajñapana gaunartha karila mukhya artha acharya. Shankaracharya is not at fault, for it is under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that he has covered the real purport of the Vedas. So here Prabhupada explains in the purport why Shankaracharya propagated the Mayavada philosophy. So we will go to the second para, third para. One may argue that since Shankaracharya is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, how is it that he cheated people in this way? The answer is that he did so on the order of his master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Padma Purana in the words of Lord Shiva himself. Mayavadam asat shastram prachannam baudhamuchyate mayaiva kalpitam devi kalau brahmana rupina brahmanascha param rupam nirgunam vakshyate maya sarvasvam jagatopyasya mohanartham kalau yuge vedante tu mahashastre mayavadam avaidikam mayaiva vakshyate devi jagatam nashakaranat. The Mayavada philosophy Lord Shiva informed his wife Parvati is impious, asat shastra. It is covered Buddhism. My dear Parvati, in Kali Yuga, I assume the form of a Brahmana and teach this imagined Mayavada philosophy. In order to cheat the atheists, I describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be without form and without qualities. Similarly, in explaining Vedanta, I describe the same Mayavada philosophy in order to mislead the entire population toward atheism by denying the personal form of the Lord. In the Shiva Purana, again, Lord Shiva says, in Kali Yuga, to mislead the people in general by propounding, in Kali Yuga, I mislead the people in general by propounding imaginary meanings for the Vedas to bewilder them. These are the descriptions of the Puranas. So there's a lot more here on Mayavada philosophy. So I just wanted to talk a little about Mayavada philosophy. Yes, thank you. So that was a long reading, and that's how reading about Vedanta-Sutra is, very long and goes into so many details. So while introducing me, Prabhuji was saying how I was kind of atheist in the beginning. And the reason for that is that I was attending Mayavada classes. So my childhood, I grew up in a very Brahminical, cultural, devotional family. A lot of devotional events happening around me all the time. Other than the traditional festivals, pujas, constantly there was music and dance in my house because my father, he was a very good singer. He used to write a lot of dance dramas. He would write the words. There were people to set it to music, and all of us would be engaged in dancing for those themes. So in this way, there's constant music and dance going on in the family. So I grew up in a very devotional way. There were lots of books to read. And when I read a copy of the Mahabharata, which my aunt left behind with me, so there I immediately developed a great attachment for Lord Krishna, seeing the friendship he had with the Pandavas. That really attracted me, and I picked up friendship with Krishna, I mean, a mood of devotion for Krishna. Earlier, even before that, when I was 15, I had read the Bhagavad-Gita, the Mayavada interpretation by Chidbhavananda Swami. That was my first reading. But since I was young, I did not take so much of the philosophy. I just got attracted to Krishna and the words of Bhagavad-Gita. So I had this very strong attachment for Krishna. And as I was growing up, and I was about 18, then some questions started coming up in my mind, and I would meditate on my own. And finally, I came to one question. After that question, I could not proceed further in my own meditations. I need external help. So that question was, what is stronger? Is it our faith? Is it prayer? Or is it the Supreme Lord? So I came to this question, and after that, I didn't know where to proceed. So I needed an external guru to give me these answers. And whatever was the plan of Krishna, I took this question to my very nice cousin brother. I'm very grateful to him. He has guided me well in my life. So I took this question to him, and he happens to be a very strong Advaita Vadi. It's fully into studying the Shastras. So I took this question to him, and I got introduced to the philosophy of Shankaracharya. So there, when I went for these classes, whatever question you ask, the answer is everything is false. So supposing you ask him that you are saying in such and such a way, but the Shastras are saying like this, then the answer is, anyway, the Shastras are false. So if you say everything is false, then what is there? What is there for you to accept? So the form of the Lord is false. The Shastra that says that Krishna's form is eternal, Sachitananda, that is false. Then naturally you go into atheism, which is what Prabhupada and Lord Shiva in the Padma Purana, he was saying that I will be teaching covered atheism. So therefore you see Shankaracharya's philosophy, whether you call it Advaita, Mayavada or Brahmavada, it borders on atheism, but we can call it healthy atheism because generally atheistic, they take on a hedonistic life, just enjoy as you wish. There is no God, there is no rebirth, do whatever you like, just be merry. But that is not what Shankaracharya taught. Because though Shankaracharya was confusing the people, he also wanted to give them a way to come to a higher level of devotion. So they have this process of Panchopasana where they have to worship Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, Surya Dev. I think I'm not sure about the others, so I just mentioned these. So they worship these personalities also. So in that way, though they are atheistic, where they say nothing, ultimately nothing is true, only Brahman is true. Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya. Brahman is the only truth and everything else is false. That is a conclusion of their theory. So though they have this theory, still they follow a very regulated life, especially brahmacharya. They follow a very regulated life. Therefore, we can call it healthy atheism, but still it is atheism anyway, because like Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, avajananti mamudha manushim tanumashratam. These people, they think that my form is material, it is mortal. Param bhavam ajananto. They don't know my superior nature. So why has this confusion, why this confusing philosophy has come into place? So here we got the explanation from Lord Shiva himself that I'm going to confuse the population. So we have two reasons for this. One, we all know, we have heard very often in Prabhupada's books, that in the beginning of Kali Yuga, people were doing fire sacrifices, which were done earlier in Treta Yuga. And they were doing the sacrifices, means they were killing animals. Gomedha Yajna, Ashwamedha Yajna. In these sacrifices, the cow or the horse is sacrificed. And there are other sacrifices where lower animals are also sacrificed. Even in the Bhagavatam, we have the story of King Prachina Barhi, who was doing so many sacrifices that if you enter his kingdom, everywhere you see kushagras placed facing the northern direction, because almost everywhere in his kingdom he has done these sacrifices. And what was the result? When Narada Muni visits King Prachina Barhi, Narada tells him, look all around you. All those animals that you killed are waiting to pounce on you and eat you. So the animals that Prachina Barhi killed did not get liberation. They were hanging around in animal ghostly bodies. We have heard of human ghosts, but here we are hearing of animal ghosts. So they also exist. So Narada was pointing out that, look, all these fire sacrifices you have done, you have only caused harm to the animals. You have not given them liberation. So then Narada teaches him what he should do to be free of those sins. So similarly, when Kali Yuga started, people were doing all these animal sacrifices and there was degradation. People were doing it more for eating the flesh of the animal than to please the demigods. So in this situation, then the Lord came as Buddha and he taught the philosophy of non-violence. So he said, there is no Veda. Why did he say that? Because they are doing sacrifices citing the Vedic scriptures. So the Vedas say to do this yajna, therefore we are doing. So then Buddha says, no, there is no Veda. Just follow ahimsa. So he had this 3 principles and he taught them to follow the Sangha, to follow the principle of ahimsa and dharma. So in this way, Buddha stopped animal killing. And of course, the Vedas cannot be rejected in that way. The Vedas are the breath of the Supreme Lord. It is the sound vibration of the Supreme Lord. It is meant for the welfare of the people and it has to come back. So then as the next stage, we have Lord Shiva who comes and he gives the Vedas. Now, after you say there is no Veda, there is no God, can you say, do Sharanagati? Surrender to Krishna. Is it possible? Impossible. That is why we have so many ways of bringing people to Krishna consciousness, because immediately it's very difficult for people who don't have devotion to take it up. Prabhupada used to say that when he went to the West, people took up Krishna consciousness very quickly because they were not offensive. Whereas in India, it was very difficult for people to take it up. And what does he mean by this? That in the West, people were not offensive. So the main offense there that they didn't do is they were not confused by the Mayavada philosophy. So they may be atheistic, they may just not care about God, they may have been sinful, but they never committed the offense of thinking that Krishna has a material body. This Mayavada offense they never committed, and therefore it was very easy for them to take up Krishna consciousness. So if we are deluded by this Mayavada philosophy, then it is very difficult to surrender to Krishna. And that is what Lord Shiva, he was speaking to people who had no faith in the Vedas, who were told that the Vedas are not necessary. So he had to bring back the Vedas in a way that would convince them. So he brought in the Vedas through certain interpretations that would please the people, and he gave them freedom that you interpret it in any way you want. So the more unique, more new your style of interpreting the Vedas, the greater guru you are. So this is the way. It's full of interpretation and what they can make out of this. So this is what Lord Shiva did. And then at a later stage, we have the other Vaishnava Acharyas, Madhvacharya, Sripada Ramanujacharya, and they came and gave the Vaishnava meaning to the Vedas. So that is why you find very often that Madhvacharya and Ramanujacharya, they are debating a lot with Mayavadi people and convincing them of the philosophy of Vaishnava Tattva. So Ramanuja also, we know he was learning under a Mayavadi Guru, Yadava Prakasha. So at the time that they came, it is only the Mayavada philosophy that was dominant in India. Even at the time that I was growing up, Mayavada philosophy was very dominant. It took me a very long time to give up I would always compare whatever I read, whatever I heard with the Mayavadi principles that I had studied. So it took me a long time to completely give up the Mayavadi principles, because that is what the situation of India was 30, 40 years back. But after that, the Bhakti movement by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Tukaram, the devotees of Panduranga, they all set in a lovely situation where more and more people were taking to devotion, and it comes naturally. Devotion comes so naturally that it is very easy for people to pick up. Whereas in understanding Mayavada philosophy, you have to really think so hard to understand what they are saying, how they are interpreting the words. So devotion is so much more natural. It is dormant, as Prabhupada says, and it's so easy to engage in acts of devotion. So even here in the commentaries, in the translations and purport that we read, Prabhupada explains how we should, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also explains how we should take the Vedas, the Upanishads as it is, the direct meaning without interpretation. Then we get the real truth. So the Vedanta-Sutra, it has aphorisms, it has just these short cryptic statements, Athato Brahma Jignasa, like this, small aphorisms. And based on that, people give their philosophy. If you see Shankaracharya, he has written the Shariraka Bhashya, where he, using the same sutras, he gives his Mayavada philosophy. So the philosophy should be consistent throughout all the sutras. So we read how it has the 5 parts. You have to give examples, you have to prove from Vedic literature. All these 5 parts are there. So Shankaracharya did that. Next in line, we know Madhvacharya did that. And then Ramanujacharya did that. And for our Sampradaya, following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Baladev Vidyabhushana has done that. And what is very interesting is when Shankaracharya went to Kashmir, which is the Sharada Peetham, that was the seat of all the scholars. And you have to win them. Only then your philosophy is established. So Shankaracharya did that. Ramanujacharya was also honored there. Sharada Devi personally came and gave him the Hayagriva Vigraham. So what about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? He also propounded a philosophy, a philosophy which was not known before, called the Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. So we know Shankaracharya had his Advaita theory, Ramanujacharya has the Vishishta Dvaita. And they have their philosophies, and they have to prove their philosophy by giving a commentary to the Vedanta-Sutra. So what about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? How did he get the authorization of Sharada Devi for his philosophy? Because he never went to Kashmir, he did not debate with the Pandits there. So how did it happen? So you will remember this incident where Keshava Kashmiri came to Navadvip. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord, and Sharada Devi is not going to authorize him. It would be very embarrassing for her to have to do that. So then this Leela happens where Keshava Kashmiri, he is already a Digvijayi. Digvijayi means that he has conquered all the directions by his debates. So which means he must be the topmost among the Kashmiri Pandits. And he has come to Navadvip. And we know how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu debates with Keshava Kashmiri. Of course, it's a very more than a debate. It's a conversation where Keshava Kashmiri composes 100 verses about Ganga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu finds the faults in his composition, and Keshava Kashmiri feels completely humbled. He feels completely defeated, and he is feeling so sad, upset that of all the people, did I have to get defeated by a 16-year-old boy? He was feeling so bad, and he prayed so much to Saraswati Devi, Sharada Devi, and in the dream, Saraswati Devi comes and says that, don't you know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Lord Krishna himself? You better go and accept defeat. So in this way, we find that in the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, there is the authorization by the Kashmiri Pandits and the authorization by Saraswati herself. So this is a very interesting Leela that rather than Mahaprabhu go there, Kashmir, the Digvijayi Pandit and the goddess of learning came to where Mahaprabhu is and sanctioned, authorized the Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. This is what this Leela that I'm connecting to the Kashmiri Pandit is my own understanding, because when I was meditating on this, when I saw that all these acharyas, they go to Kashmir and they present the philosophy that they are preaching. What about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? I had this doubt, and I was thinking a lot on this, and then I remembered the Keshava Kashmiri pastime, and it seemed to be an answer to what I was meditating on. So this is my own understanding of that pastime. So this is one reason why Lord Shiva confused the people with the Sharirika Bhashya, the Mayavada philosophy. And there is one more reason we find in the Kurma Purana. So the Kurma Purana describes the pastime, how the river Godavari came to the earth. So there are two versions how Godavari came to the earth. So we will take that version which includes the Mayavada philosophy. So the pastime is that sage Gautama, because of his austerities and penances, he had this benediction that his ashrama is always prosperous. So there was a time when there's a drought all over the world, almost like 12 years, there is no rain. But Gautama Muni's ashram, everything is green and there is water, everything is fine. So then many sages, they come to live with Gautama Rishi. So they come to live there so that they will get their food, they get good association. But as time went by, somehow they became envious of Gautama. And they made this scheme, they made this conspiracy. They took the help of Ganesha. They asked him to become a cow and eat the crops in the field. So when Ganesha in the form of the cow was eating the crops in the field, Gautama Rishi saw this. And to make the cow go away, he took a blade of grass and he touched the cow with that grass. Now what will happen? He just wanted the cow to go away, but because of the conspiracy, when Gautama Rishi touched the cow died. So now all the sages came and they attacked Gautama that you have committed such a big sin. You have killed a cow. So you have to repent for this. And how do you repent for this? You should go and take bath in the Ganga. So Gautama, he thought, how will I go to Ganga? So I will make Ganga come here. So he prayed to Lord Shiva, and the Ganga from his head came to where Gautama Rishi was, and it became the river Godavari. So that is why Godavari is called Gautami Ganga, and also the Ganga of Dakshina Ganga, the Ganga of South India. So after this happened, Lord Vishnu also came, and Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva had a conversation. Both of them were very, very unhappy that the sages had behaved in this way. Why were they envious of the Rishi? So then Lord Shiva says, shall I destroy them? They have been so mean. Shall I just destroy them? And Lord Vishnu says, but they are Brahmanas. We cannot destroy them. So you do one thing. You destroy their punyas. You make them completely confused. So Lord Shiva, he says, okay, I will give them a philosophy by understanding which, by following which, they will become fools. So this is in the Kurma Purana. So there's also links to why Lord Shiva comes as Shankaracharya and confuses the Brahmanas, the people who think that they are very intelligent. And we see here that the sages were envious of Gautama, and that one quality which we read again and again in Prabhupada's purports is that Mayavadis are envious of Lord Krishna. So that quality of envy is also there. So what are they envious of? Envy is where you don't accept someone as superior to you. Why should I accept you as superior? I have the same quality. Why should I accept you as superior? This is envy. So if you're worshipping the deity, then they may tell you that why are you worshipping the deity? You should go beyond all that. When I was studying the books of Prabhupada, one person told me that why are you reading all this? You should become a Vyasa yourself and write such books. So then I understood, okay, this is what is meant when they say that Mayavadis are envious of Krishna. So envy means that you don't accept anyone as superior to you. So the Mayavadis, what do they say? Hey, Krishna, you and I are the same. You are Brahman, I am Brahman. We are same. So that is what we saw in the first verse that we read today from Chaitanya Charitamrta. The Mayavadi sannyasis, under the leadership of Prakashananda Saraswati, they are saying, we are all Narayana. That is the first purport we read, that we are all Narayana. And Narayana is an opulent person. So why is a poor man a Narayana? Why would you call a poor person a Narayana? Oh, he is Daridra Narayana. He's Narayana in the form of a poor man. So in this way, they want to see that everyone is Brahman, therefore everyone is Narayana. So they're confused about what is Brahman and who is Narayana. And how did this confusion happen? It happened by the will of the Supreme Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva, who undertook the service of confusing these people. So what kind of people get confused by this philosophy? It is those people who are ignorant like I was, and I took my question to my cousin. So either you are an ignorance or you are envious by nature. So such people are attracted to this philosophy. So what is the way to bring them out of that envy? Do we just want to neglect them, ignore them, that, oh, you're envious and we won't have anything to do with you? We don't see that attitude among our acharyas. They debated with the Mayavadis. They brought them to Krishna consciousness. And here we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is debating with the Mayavadis. He's explaining to them. And of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's method is very different. He did not debate. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took such a humble position. He was sitting in that place where people wash their hands and feet. So why was he sitting there? He took such a humble position because the Mayavadis were criticizing him that you're just a sentimentalist walking in the road, singing, dancing like a sentimentalist. What is this? They were deriding him in this way. So Mahaprabhu thought that since you have such a low opinion of me, I will sit in this lowly place. But then the Mayavadi sannyasis could see very clearly that he was not an ordinary person. What to speak of a low person? There was so much effulgence coming from his form. He was looking so beautiful that they got automatically attracted, and they understood that I may think I am Narayana, but who I am seeing now is a very, very different Narayana. He seems to be the real Narayana. So from all the Shastras they have read, there are descriptions of Narayana which they cannot miss. Like Prabhupada points out in the purport, oh, if you're Narayana, where are your four hands? They know very well that Narayana has four hands. So where is it? So they know, they have read the descriptions of Narayana, how beautiful he is, how he is always smiling, how there's this effulgence coming from his form, which is equal to 1,000 suns. And they could feel that this person seems to be exhibiting all this. And then, so what did they do? They surrendered. They surrendered their envy. They accepted that you are superior to us. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was able to give them the Vaishnava philosophy, which they accepted and surrendered totally. Prakashananda Saraswati, along with all his disciples and followers, surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is Sharanagati that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us. We sang that song in the beginning by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that by doing Sharanagati, then you will understand actually who is Krishna. So last 1 month for Purushottam Masa, many of you would have been reading the Brahma Vimohana Leela. And there we saw how Brahma also wanted to test Krishna. I have so much powers. Who is this little boy? Let me see. Are my powers and his power equal, or does he have greater power? So again, here we see here Brahma refusing to accept that a cowherd boy could be superior to him. So he did the test. And what was the result? In 10.14.14, Lord Brahma says, Narayanastvam nahi sarvadehinam atmasya dhishakhila lokasakshi Narayanongam narabhojalayanat tachapi satyam natavaiva maya. Translation: are you not the original Narayana? O Supreme Controller, since you are the soul of every embodied being and the eternal witness of all created realms, indeed, Lord Narayana is your expansion. And he is called Narayana because he is the generating source of the primeval water of the universe. He is real, not a product of your illusory Maya. So this verse, this is 10.14.14, is a confirmation that Mayavada philosophy doesn't have a solid base in truth. Why here Lord Brahma himself, he's saying, He is real. Narayana is real. He is not a product of Maya. Bhagavad-Gita, what did Krishna say? That they are fools who think that my body is made of Maya. So here Brahma is confirming that your body is not a product of Maya. Then who is Narayana? He is the generating source of the primeval water of the universe. He is the original Narayana, the original Purusha who created the universe. So we know this Narayana Parovyaktat. He is original. He is there before the creation. And who is Lord Krishna? Krishna is the original Narayana. Narayana is the expansion of Krishna. So this conclusive truth is given by Lord Brahma. And he surrenders to Krishna that. And how does Brahma surrender to Krishna? It is said that he was falling again and again and again, over and over again, he is doing Dandavat Pranama. And all his four crowns are touching the ground in submission, and tears are flowing from his eyes, washing the lotus feet of Krishna. Brahma is in ecstasy, in internal ananda, is feeling so much ecstasy of the glory of Krishna. So Brahma testing Krishna was not because of envy, but it was engineered by Lord Krishna so that Brahma would have an opportunity to instruct the people that Krishna is Govindam Adi Purusha. So Brahma is not like the other Mayavadis who are envious by nature, but Brahma doubting the superiority of Krishna is only by the will of Lord Krishna himself. So So I wanted to explain what is the purpose of the Mayavada philosophy, what is its major flaw, and what is the way to come out of that envy that is possible by accepting the superiority of Lord Krishna. At least you accept the superiority of the devotees if you cannot fully understand the glory of Krishna. So that is what happens when Mayavadis, they have their own ideas about Krishna, but when they see a devotee, then their heart begins to soften. Jayapataka Maharaj explains that when he was in Kolkata, he was a temple president there. One Mayavadi used to come to the temple every day, and the devotees tried to tell him the Vaishnava philosophy, but he was always arguing. So Jayapataka Maharaj says that it's like they have a transformer in their brain. Whatever you tell them, they interpret it in a Mayavadi way. So after trying, they just stopped. Okay, they just left him. So this man, he used to like to come to the temple. He liked speaking with the devotees. He liked to do some service. So they just let him do that. And after a few years, he was purified of that Mayavadi transformer. And then he says, oh, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Why didn't I know this all these years? So it took him a long period of service and sadhu sangha to give up that envy and accept Lord Krishna as Bhagavan. So in the current times, we are surrounded by people who are envious of the Supreme Lord. So they may not call themselves Mayavadi, Brahmavadi. They may not even have a philosophy. They have their own ideas of the world and God. Anything you tell them, they will say, oh, I think like this. This is my opinion. This is what I feel. So for them, what they think, they feel is very important. So how do we bring them to Krishna consciousness? We have to be very sweet, very nice persons, and by attraction to the sadhu, to the devotee, slowly they will see that, okay, here is a person better than me. He's more peaceful, he's more loving, he's more affectionate, he's more regulated in his daily activities, he's so kind to everyone. These are the qualities I also want. I want to be peaceful, I want to be happy, I want to be good with everyone. This is the way I want to be, so let me learn how to be like this. So Sadhu Prabhupada said in one of the purports that if we are advanced spiritually, then we can influence the audience. So what is that spiritual advancement? We understand that everyone is connected to Krishna. just that it is covered by some kind of a material body. So if we can have that view, Prabhupada used to say that everyone is a pure devotee. It is just that now it's a green mango and after some time it will become a ripe mango. So we see that everyone is a devotee of Krishna, just that they have a covering. And in that way, we just be very good people, very loving people. And that love will start softening their hearts. They will see that here are some superior qualities. Here is someone with a superior quality. And then let me follow what they do so that I also get those superior qualities. So we see here also that Prakashananda Saraswati was not, he did not even hear the philosophy yet from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What attracted him was the personality of Lord Chaitanya. So in that way, in our small ways, we try to attract people. We give them prasadam. We just smile sweetly, just smile. That smile will attract their hearts, like it is said in the Bhagavatam. Devahuti gets attracted just by seeing the smile of Kardama Muni. A Krishna conscious person can attract people just by their smiles. So in this way, we can play a part in the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada by purifying the people around us, bringing them to a level of accepting Krishna's superiority. Thank you very much. I'm sure I have made some errors in talking about the Vedanta-Sutra or the Advaita philosophy because um, I was not very clear on the terms. So please excuse me for that. The purpose of making all that reference was to point out how the Mayavada philosophy was meant to confuse and how surrendering to Krishna should be our goal. So kindly excuse the errors I would have made in terms in trying to come to this conclusion. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So if anybody would like to comment or correct me wherever I have made mistakes, I'll be very glad to accept that. I don't know if there are time for questions. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Thanks a lot. It was a wonderful explanation about the flaws in the Mayavadi philosophy and what are the dangers into it. Mataji, before we go into question and answers, Radharani Mataji, can you moderate this part of the questions, this part of the session? Radharani Mataji?
Prabhu, Hare Krishna, I'm not aware of.
No, just the moderate the question and answers part. So devotees might ask questions. You just be moderator. So by the time you're ready, I'll ask one question to Mataji. Mataji, from today's session, that you initially explained about Prachina Barhi's incident by where Narada Maharshi was telling him. Mataji, from our understanding, my understanding is that when animals were offered in the fire sacrifice, they were supposed to get a better body, like higher body. So why in this case, Narada Maharshi they said all the animals whom you offered in the fire sacrifice are hanging around in the animal ghostly body. So how to understand this?
So if Narada Muni says that, so that is the truth. He's seeing it and he's saying it. So we understand if the Brahmanas are not qualified, then the animals don't get liberation. So going by what Narada Muni says, we can understand that the Brahmanas who did those sacrifices were not qualified sufficiently to give liberation to those animals.
Thank you, Mataji. Mataji, my second question, after that I'll hand over to Radharani Mataji to take it further. Mataji, we see that you explained initially like when Madhvacharya Sampradaya, they were more engaged in debating with Mayavadi philosophers. So that's what you mentioned. And compared to them, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's approach towards Mayavadi philosophers is totally different. So he took very humble approach. That was his strategy he adopted, and he could convert many Mayavadi philosophers into pure Vaishnavas. But following again Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's footsteps, when we see Srila Prabhupada, his approach towards Mayavadi philosophy is totally different. he strongly condemns, he blasphemes, not blasphemes, like chastises, and he cuts them into pieces, and he's very, very strong. He will not even tolerate. He says they are rascals. So to that extent, Prabhupada went. How can we understand what kind of approach we have to take towards Mayavadi philosophers? Because since you traveled all the way from a devotee to Mayavadi, then back to devotee. So you are
Mayavadi
the
and
right
back
person
to
to.
devotee.
So you are right person to clarify this to us.
Yes, that is why I'm grateful for that section of my life where I was in touch with the Mayavadis, because it gave me a very good understanding of what is wrong there. So we see that Prabhupada had two ways. One is the books and one is his personality. So in the books, he's very, very strong. But in his personality, he was always very kind and mild. So you will not find any conversation where Prabhupada had with a guest and he tells the guest, you are talking Mayavada philosophy, you are a fool and rascal. Never you will find such a reference. So with guests, Prabhupada is very, very respectful. He gives them prasadam. He moves very nicely with them. There's one incident that happened in Bombay. One Mayavadi person came. He was talking with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was trying so hard to convince him, and he was just not accepting. So finally, Prabhupada got so wild. He stood up, he shook that man, and he said, I'm telling you, Krishna is a person. He's eternally a person. And this man he never expected this. He was completely shocked. And then after that, he left the room. And the devotees heard him talking to himself that, yes, Krishna must be a person. Krishna must be a person. So what Prabhupada did had a very good effect on him. He accepted that, yes, Krishna must be a person. And then the devotees came inside and asked Prabhupada, what happened with that man? He was talking like this, what happened? And Prabhupada said, what happened? And he said, I can do this because I'm an old man. Don't any of you do it. So Prabhupada very rarely he did such things. And he also said in that incident that don't imitate me. Don't try to do this also. So we should follow the gentle and very, what do you say, perfect interactions that Srila Prabhupada had with people. But in the books, he's very strong. Because people can be on different levels and you cannot tell them all the Krishna conscious philosophy when you meet them for 10 minutes. But in the books, it is meant to give education. It is meant to give us the knowledge, and he has to put everything there. And we read it and understand it according to our level. So when I read the book, I know it's going to have a lot of material there, and I will take that which is suitable to me. That is why we read Krishna conscious literature again and again. We get different knowledge out of that. Why? Because we only take those points which are suitable to us. So if you read Bhagavad-Gita, first time you read Bhagavad-Gita, you're already in a lot of misery. So we are in a very miserable state. We are looking for happiness. Just a second, please. Sorry. So when we read the Bhagavad Gita for the first time, we have certain questions in our mind. And when we get those answers, we take that. We miss out many things. And let's say you read the Bhagavad Gita after 2 years. Now this time your understanding has developed. You have attained peace because you're being chanting, you're doing service, associating with devotees. So your understanding is more, you're not looking so much for freedom from distress. So then you take on more things from the Bhagavad Gita. In this way, stage by stage, only then our eyes open to what is there. So the books contain complete knowledge, but in our personal interaction, we can only give what that person can take at that point. I hope this answers, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji, thank you very much. It is very, very clear. Thank you. Radha and Mataji, can please take over from here, the question and answer session.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my
Hare
hand.
Krishna, Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Pranams, Mataji. So there is a question from Varunapati Prabhu. He's from London, who's been attending the class for regularly. His question is, could you please confirm if followers of Shankaracharya ji believe that after Brahman realization, they will reach to Brahma Jyoti? Do they have the concept of Brahma Jyoti?
Yes, absolutely. That is their goal. Brahmavadis attain Brahman, the effulgence of the Supreme Lord. That is their goal. So we read that very often in Prabhupada's books, that they attain that Brahma Jyoti. But because there is no activity, there is no engagement, then they start feeling a little restless. At that point, they come back to the material world. And then by the association of sadhus, if they get that, then they can advance to the Vaikuntha planets. That is definitely their goal.
One more question from Kalachakra Prabhuji is there. So his question is, does it mean that the cure was worse than the disease? Buddha comes to rectify the tendency of mindless killing of animals by denying the Vedas. Buddhism has a great following, and Shiva is coming to lead people astray. Why is he not powerful enough to convince the people? The shloka says Jagatam Nasha Karanat. Does it not hint that this may be for the destruction of the world?
Yes, Jagatam Nashakana definitely means destruction of the world. So the world did go down a bit, but that is not the end. After destruction, there is creation again. Always it's like that. So Shiva took down the people. We cannot say took down, because actually it's a process of they were down and then it's a gradual lift up. So it's like, when somebody goes down really low, then you have to go down and bring them up slowly. So if you pick up from the floor, you cannot get to the top platform in a leap. Of course, in bhakti, it is possible. From Shraddha, you can go up very quickly depending on your faith. But for the other processes, it's step by step. And even if the world is destroyed, then there is creation again. So Shiva's service is always destruction. That is his main occupation as the Gunavatara. So that is why Vishnu engaged him in that service, and he, being the maintainer, sent his messengers, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya. In I think Radha Krishna Garnodesha Deepika, it is said that Madhvacharya is Madhavi Gopi. Though we also know that she is Mukhya Prana, Vayudev. So in this way, the messengers of the Lord have been coming. Ramanujacharya is Adisesha himself, and then the Lord himself comes. So the Lord is always caring for the people, but sometimes he has to do some bit of nashanam to bring our people. Have you seen farmers? They have one crop and then they completely burn everything. And after some time, they grow again. So some kind of destruction happens there, but that enables better crops for the next cropping season. That has to be done. And also we see that if you want to give good knowledge to someone, then you have to remove the misconceptions that they have. So it's a step-by-step process. So definitely when Shiva says here, Jagatam Nasham, it is not like the Tandava dance and the complete annihilation of the universe. It is only a partial destruction. And very soon, Lord Vishnu had made the plans to bring up the people again. I hope that's okay.
Mataji,
So there's this question here that was the cure worse than the disease? If you take Ayurveda medicines, so what happens first is your disease seems to be getting worse because you end up with diarrhea, you end up with vomiting, your fever may go higher. So you will find that you're actually suffering more. But what is the purpose? It is detoxicant. Yeah, your body is becoming cleansed of all the toxins, and then the medicine begins to work. Right? Even in chemotherapy, what are they doing? They are killing all the bad cells so that the good cells can grow more. Was that right? Was that okay?
I think so, Mataji. Chakra Prabhu, are you there around so that you can?
If you'd like to add anything, you're welcome. Okay, we'll move on.
Mataji, there is one more question, Mataji. Do we realize Brahman before leaving the body or after leaving the body? Even for devotees, Brahman seems to be the first step in three aspects of Lord's realization. That is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan.
Definitely, we can realize Brahman before leaving the body. Realizing Brahman means what? Understanding that I am Atma, that I am the soul made of Sachitananda, and that is my quality. I am Brahman, I am spiritual. This is not very difficult to understand. Why? I don't see any difficulty in understanding this. The second chapter of Bhagavad-Gita gives us so many verses to understand this. As we go on chanting, we are removing the material coverings, and we begin to feel the ananda that we feel, the happiness that we feel when we chant, when we do kirtan. Where is that happiness coming from? It is coming from the soul. So definitely we realize that I am spirit soul, and according to the principles of devotion, we are moving from Shraddha to Prema, which means you're not just realizing I'm Atma, you also realize your spiritual form. What is your Swarupa with Krishna? So, which is the highest stage of Bhagavan realization. So, all that happens right when we are in this body. But of course, depending on our practice, how much we achieve in this lifetime, that's up to each individual, how much desire they have to attain that Swarupa, how much sadhana they are putting in to achieve that Swarupa. But definitely it's possible in this lifetime.
Thank you, Mataji. One last question. From Radhapati Krishnadas Prabhu. Is there any Shastric Praman to confirm that Lord Shiva is applying the funeral pyre ash of Vaishnavas?
I don't have any Shastra Pramana for that, but we have plenty of Shastra Pramana that Lord Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava. And even Tulsi Das says in that song, Prema Mudita Manase Kaho, he says, Mahadeva Satata Japata Divya Ramanam Kashi Marata Mukta Karata Ketaranam. That Mahadev is always chanting the names of Lord Rama. And if anybody dies in Kashi, how do they get liberation? That's because Lord Shiva comes and chants the name of Lord Rama in his ear. So we know that he's a Vaishnava, and Vaishnavas like to put the dust of Vaishnavas on their body. But I don't have any Shastric Praman for that. But it doesn't seem impossible.
Thank you, Mataji. Shraddha Mataji would like to ask your question, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
Please accept my humble obeisances, Mataji. Mataji, my question not related to today's session, Mataji, but
Mataji, can you switch on your video, please, if you don't mind?
yes, Mataji. My question is not related to today's session, Mataji. but it is from Canto 11. Canto 11, we are reading that Arjuna has done the last rites of Supreme Lord. So, how to understand this point? Like from the beginning, we are reading our body and Lord's body has so much difference. Lord is having a transcendental body, which is not perishable. Ours is made of Panchabhutas. But there, maybe it is written in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, it is the plan of Lord. Because of the Lord's plan, it was arranged in such a way. But uh, how to understand with our insignificant senses, like these many days we are reading, we are having the difference, and the Lord's body is having the difference. But doing the last rites, when we are preaching to the hardcore devotees and all, how to convince them, Mataji? Can you please enlighten Mataji?
So this is an arrangement for the Lord to delude those people who want to believe that Krishna has a mortal body. And the Pandavas, they are always in line with Krishna's desires. Whatever desires Krishna has, they are waiting to fulfill that. So when they understood that Krishna wants to do this, he wants to confuse the materialists, and the Pandavas also fall in line with that. So how do we convince the people that we come across? First of all, we don't make too much endeavor to convince people philosophically. So like I said here, we saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that before he gave the philosophy, he attracted the people by his personality. So you can quote any number of verses, but you will not be able to convince people if they don't have some purification. So therefore, don't go out to convince people. You will completely lose them. You'll completely lose them. So you can say things like, "Oh, I really don't know. I have to read up some more. I should ask people about this. I'm really not sure about it. Let me ask, and when I get the answer, I will tell you. Now, why don't you come? I have made some very nice pulao today. Let's eat." You know, so you get them purified. So by giving prasadam, by attracting them to your sadhu personality, and then when you see that they have come to a certain level of understanding, they may forget the question also, you know. So when you see that they have come to a certain level of understanding, then you can refer to the purport again in 10th canto, where the verse describes that the hunter put the arrow on Krishna's toe. In that purport, Prabhupada, there's reference to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur saying, one point he says, generally when hunters put the arrow on someone and they want to relieve that person of the pain, they immediately pull out the arrow. So in Ramayana, you will see Bali is attacked. Rama shoots his arrow at Bali. And as Bali desires to talk, then Rama tells Hanuman to pull out the arrow. And then Bali talks. So there, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that the hunter, he was offering prayers to the Lord. He did not bother to pull out the arrow. So he says that is a proof that the arrow did not affect Krishna in any way. It was just a pastime. So if you read that purport, there are some points there. This is one thing I remember prominently. So you can just read up that purport also. You will get some points how to convince people. But again, my advice, don't try to convince philosophically. Unless you know that they are in a sober mood to take what you say. Otherwise, they will interpret that also, and it will not take you anywhere. Okay, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, we have that experience when we try to convince them that from that answer, one more question will come. From that question, we try to answer. From that answer, one more question will come. And they try to
It just
find
keeps going
questions.
on.
Yeah, they try to find the questions from the answers. So means the mood is, the mindset is already that I don't want to get convinced. So when
Yes.
I know that they don't want to get convinced, then there's no point in explaining. We had this experience. Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah.
Wonderful answer.
Correct.
Mataji, there is a comment from Varnapati Govinda Das Prabhu.
Yes. I read that, Mataji.
Okay, thank you so much, Mataji. It was wonderful interacting with you. Mataji, thank you. You are such a wonderful guidance. I met you in Chennai and you did guide me for some of our children programs, which now because of Ramananda Prabhuji, we are doing a lot. And we are even doing online Zoom classes for around 80 children.
Radhani Mataji, by the way, to introduce Radhani Mataji, she is our principal.
Okay.
Mataji, we have taken a lot of guidance
Radhani
from
Mataji, she is our principal for Mahagurukul.
Correct.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. And we are also doing some Sunday online classes for some of the Indian children also, because they came all through this 18-day Bhagavad-Gita class, which we did from Mathura Desh, from Muscat. So, and that also we have around 80 children who are coming online for the classes. Thank
Very
you,
nice.
Mataji. You are such an inspiration, and all your wonderful projects like visiting the places of pilgrimage. That was also very nice, which I could get a glimpse from KKD teachers were doing it. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much. Hare
Krishna.
वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Hare
Thank you very much, Mataji. Thanks for your time. Though we know that you are a very busy person, but still you could take out time for us. It is our fortune that we had nectar from both Prabhu as well as from you also in short intervals. Like to hear again in a very short time, if you allow us to do that. I'd like to thank once again. I'm sure all of us, all the members of the Chaitanya Charitamrta group, they really had a nice time. I forgot to add a few points about our group. We started this Chaitanya Charitamrta study group about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I can say. So we have almost about 90-95 members attending this session. Like there are families, and within the same connection, there are multiple members are attending like that. So almost all are initiated devotees, except very few. And this is not limited only to Mathura Desh. The members attending from Krishna Katha Desh, Qatar, and also from India, from UK. We had one the devotee just now. He asked a few questions. Varnapati Govinda Prabhu, Mataji. They are attending from UK. So they're one of the regular attendees, and Prabhu is like a Parishit Maharaj of our group. So from his questions, he always Prabhu is very inquisitive, and because of Prabhu, we are learning a lot. Because many of us we are not asking questions; we are just sitting, taking back seat. So Prabhu is no on our behalf. Prabhu knows that Prabhu on our behalf he asks so many questions, and
That's
he
nice. Asking questions is very nice way of learning.
yes, Mataji. So we
Very
are very
important.
fortunate for that. Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. Thanks once again. So we look forward to hear from you again. Nanda pranam to you, and please convey our pranams to Prabhu.
Pranam to all the devotees.
Hare Krishna. Nanda pranam. So we'll end the session here. Thank you, devotees. Hare Krishna.